According to the Gestalt psychology, the whole is different from the sum of its parts. Based upon this belief, Gestalt psychologists developed a set of principles to explain perceptual organization, or how smaller objects are grouped to form larger ones. These principles are often referred to as the laws of perceptual organization. In this video, we will explore how these terms can be applied in graphic design, so by understanding them, we are going to be able to create logos that interact with people's expectations, knowledge, and attitudes. Now let's take a look to the 5 main principles behind the Gestalt theory. The first one I'm going to talk about is closure, and is one of the coolest Gestalt principles. It basically is the idea that your brain will fill in the missing parts of a design or an image to create a whole. In its simplest form, the principle of closure allows your eye to follow something like a dotted line to its end, but more complex applications are often seen in logos, like that for the World Wildlife Fund. Large pieces of the outline for the panda are missing, but your brain has no problem filling the missing sections to see the whole animal. Through closure, a logo is able to communicate by suggesting ideas or concepts with incomplete elements. In sum, closure allows the viewer to complete unfinished forms or ideas. The second principle I'm going to talk about is figure and ground. It describes our capacity to perceive the relationship between form and its surrounding space. In other words, our sense of wholeness or unity depends on how we perceive the relationship between an object and the space in which it is contained. By strategically playing with this relationship, a designer can create interest, memorability, or meaning in a logo. Also, this principle makes that your brain will distinguish between the objects it considers to be in the foreground of an image and the ones in the background. Where things get interesting is when the foreground and the background actually contain 2 distinct images, like these examples I'm putting around me. For example, in this famous illusion developed by the Danish psychologist Edgar Rubin, the viewer is usually presented with 2 shape interpretations, 2 faces or a base. It's another excellent example of the figure and ground principle. Tell me, which figure do you see? The 2 faces or the cute candlestick? Okay, so let's continue with the third principle. In our desire for wholeness, we are also able to follow the logical direction of visual forms, even if they are not on a page or a design. This is called continuation, our third principle. Through continuation, we are able to view the wholeness of a design, even if not all of its elements are depicted right there on the page. One of the best examples is the subway logo. Exemplifies the Gestalt principle of continuation because our perception follows the arrows outside of the composition. Now, the fourth principle, unity. Through unity, we are able to mentally organize elements and establish relationships between them, in spite of their diversity. Unity manifests itself in the following ways. Proximity. We perceive objects or elements that are close to one another as more unified than those that are further apart. Repetition. Objects that are repeated in a composition are perceived as more unified. And similarity. Objects or elements that are similar in color, shape, texture, or form appear to be more unified than those that are. And last but not least, the final principle, balance. It refers to the total symmetry of a composition, and there can be symmetrical or asymmetrical balance. Symmetrical balance refers to all the elements of the composition that are distributed equally, and the focus of the composition is in its center. The asymmetrical balance, on the other hand, it has elements of the composition that are not necessarily distributed equally, but their placement on the page results in harmony. They make visual sense. To conclude, there's no golden rule to follow. To understand the principles is to understand a viewer's perception of the information and what is visually communicated by objects. To use these principles is to create more appealing designs and communicate complex messages more effectively.